Back again. What took you so long? Yeah, well, I did say there's going to be pauses. A lot longer pauses now. Okay. In and amongst the many things that have been going on, how are you all doing? In general terms of speaking, all good, yeah? Cool. I've got a few bits here, but I'm not going to drag it out. I'd like to, obviously, I'll put a lot of these on Flipboard, across Twitter and things like that. But again, it's with deep regrets and respect for those who are passing on, especially those who passed away this month, and two shining lights of Stephen Hawkins and Ken Dodd. It's unfortunate, and condolences to the families and friends. But it's the way of the world, is it not? It's unfortunate. It happens. But within it all, they say that they move on to a higher plane now. So, respects to them in their crossing. Alrighty. What we got? It's been quite a busy month or two, hasn't it, really? Everything right from the North Poles, where the climate is the way it works usually, splitting in two and giving us two weather fronts circulating around the Northern Hemisphere. Nothing to do with climate change or anything, you know, it's perfectly normal. It is. Through to Americans' progress, or its progression, the reshaping of its economy, the shaping of the Oval Office staff, and trying to sort out problems with Russia, or things that revolve around Russia. Russian progress, more so with housekeeping and how they're tolerating or enduring or trying to figure out their way forward, and in and amongst accusations here, there and everywhere. I'm not saying whether they're true or false. Along with North and South Korea, their progressive union, shall we call it, through sports, through athletics. The world is watching, or has been watching, still is in some instances. China's economy is trying to boost itself up. It's been progressively expanding, growing, to the point where certain sanctions are being put in places, tariffs and so on and so forth, to try and keep the bubble in check, so to speak, or otherwise it could in turn envelop itself and then collapse. Matters of Brexit, the UK and EU progress, timetables, moving things forward. It's very quirky. I'm not going to say that it's good news, I'm not going to say it's bad news, because at the end of the day, a lot of it is par for course, because as and when you, shall we say, create one action, you will get a reaction somewhere else. But would it be, or will it be, the desired reaction, according to, much like what we was explaining before, cause and effect. If you do this, will this happen, or won't it? Yeah, it's a matter of choice. Much the same if I give a prime example. When I was talking a couple of videos back, so it's a couple of months back, about watching or observing certain aspects of Russia's, shall we say, housekeeping, as we were saying before, and progressively working the way through that. Now, speculatively speaking, based on that one assertion, I'm not saying It's anything to do with me, not by any means of the imagination. But let's say, for instance, we take that on board, and housekeeping involves sorting out what certain, shall we say, ministers are doing, and trying to keep them in check and get them moving forward and re-establishing certain understandings and cleaning up certain problems and so on and so forth. It's not beyond the realms of possibility for the chemical outbreak, the chemical poisoning of a couple of spies to be part of that housekeeping, cleaning up history, so to speak, cleaning up the track record, focusing everything into the here and now, so there's no traces. So it would be plausible to say that. It would. It could also be plausible to say that, given the stresses that are happening at the moment across in America, across in the Asian bloc, across, and across China, across to the Korean peninsula, that it would stand to be good reasoning for somebody inadvertently, shall we say, triggering off accusations for Russia, or pointing at Russia, because at the end of the day they may have produced it. I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to exonerate them, I'm not trying anything other than showing you that you need to weigh this up, because Russia really hasn't actually said anything, have they? So all evidence points in their direction, because they created the point. So in all intents and purposes, it could well have been them, based on the observations of housekeeping. But in parallel with an event that happened, or a conspiracy that happened within, I say conspiracy because it's the theories that surround why it happened, but the thing with Twin Towers across America. They're saying it was Central Asia there. Did it? But again, it's the prompts, isn't it? It's any other normal circumstances, would they have the capabilities or would they have the gumption to do them type of things? So it begs the question as to, was it them that's being given the means, or somebody's being given the means? So it could have been, chemicals from Korea, from Russia. But could that have? Is there a record of that poison being sold? Is there a record of an inventory, should we call it, of that stockpile? Is it still fully countable? Accounted for, should I say? Yeah. If this is to Russia now, or should I say this is for Russia, if they're not guilty of it, would it not be in their or your interest to look that up, to explore that avenue? If not, you just have to accept the fact that, your housekeeping has been spotted now. It's now in public eye. It's entered the mainstream. And it it's there, isn't it? The Twin Towers. Well, a lot of it, there's the details, speculative. A lot of money involved in that. As a matter of fact, there's more money involved in that, or surrounding it, that event, than there is that for the Asian bloc to actually benefit from doing it themselves, out of just sheer terrorism. That's a huge risk, and it wouldn't necessarily put them wholly and solely on the map, would it? As a matter of fact, it would be rather a crying shame for them. And it would, because what it would do, it'd open up a rift, a massive rift, which it did. Yeah. So the conspiracy theories themselves now come out of the conspiracy element and enter into more the theory. It becomes more evident as to the whys and what fors. Circumstantial, I guess so. But when you start weighing up all the evidence, it becomes more of a kind of like, it's beyond reasonable doubt. It starts to venture into the realms of beyond reasonable doubt as to why it actually happened, or why it had to happen. And then limelights are shunted across elsewhere to take the sting out of that, or otherwise, to take the sting out of that and then reinforce any progressive actions. See, this is the thing, you see. In one of my previous videos, a good couple of years back, I used a video as a form of, shall we say, introduction to some conspiracy theories. When you start looking at particular behaviours and actions and reactions of what's going on, it is definitely, we do definitely move on an episode from Sherlock Holmes, the first one, through to Sherlock Holmes' Game of Shadows. See? People out there, the conspiracy theorists, who utilise films and whatnot and the entertainment realms to, try and create some kind of air of, justification as to the things that are going on. In some instances, all I'm doing is giving you an outline of understanding. Yeah, like I was saying once before, with horoscopes, never use them as, shall we say, as literal meaning. Use them as a handle to a situation. But it is very much a very cloak and dagger situation that's going on at the moment. It's a game of shadows. But I would sooner, and again, I'm not warranting, sanctioning, or otherwise agreeing that it should happen. But in some instances, when you weigh up or try to identify the evils within it all, this current environment is the lesser of two evils. Like, for instance, when we talk about fake news. Fake news, when I look at certain news, and I had to laugh, I put it in the title, just chuckling away. Time travellers. Yeah? The upshot of it all is that, talking about certain countries going to war and what can come from it. Yeah? Some people talk about World War III. Let's not avoid it, shall we? Because the more we avoid such conversations, the more we give it weight, gravity, you know what I mean? And people are more inclined to steer towards it as a form of resolve. Yeah, some days, hey, don't get me wrong, some days I wonder if a good purging of the emotions would be a good thing for humanity. Whether it be World War III or an alien invasion. Just to vent the air. Do you know what I mean? To clear the air. And I think to myself, it's like, is it realistically within the human capacity, within our capabilities, the current 20th century, 21st century capabilities of being able to communicate and find a resolve, whether it's a compromise and more than one party loses out on something, or whether it's a turnkey kind of turn-based system, whereas, well, yeah, you benefit from this, then you benefit from that, and then you benefit from that, and so on and so on and so forth. Or is it going to be better that we avoid all of that and look at the Illuminati and go for a world government? Yeah, I mean, after all, we're already on the doorstep of global. When I say globalization, yes, global economics and so on and so forth, but globalization in the terms whereas you dissolve the vetoing power of one country for particular reasons, or whatever the reason they veto a decision for, and create a form of democratic revolving leadership government. Yeah, so it's about what you have to provide. Granted, yes, that does require a higher plane or a higher train, a higher train of thought. The ability to be able to control your emotions, see things more so objectively, and when subjective nature enters into it, it's done rationally. And as with observing utilitarianism, that the greater good is always worked towards. Now, fair enough, the greater good is a hard thing to achieve. You can't, yes, and sometimes trying to please all of the people all of the time is not possible. Hence the reason why it's a turn-on-turn based system. Because again, we have that cause and effect scenario. We have the wants, the wills, the whims of particular peoples, groups, or factions, or whatever, organisations, oligarchs, and so on and so forth. It's knowing and understanding how to let go of control. Yeah. So there's a lot to be worked with, worked with and worked on, and around, and so on and so forth. But that's generally the three things. Yeah. I see three paths. There's three paths to work down. One of them will eventually be inevitable anyway. Yeah. But how you get to that point is another thing, which in turn has prompted me to think carefully about, once this process is finished within its entirety, and this just becomes no more than just quite literally a podcast, and not so much a podcast, a blog, and offering bits of information through YouTube and so on and so forth, or training plans, and then it becomes a business. Who I would like to have a chat with, and it's not a chat as in the terms of an interview. No, this is not a newspaper. This is not about creating a news channel or anything. This is about actually having a chat about the way forward. Yeah. It's about the way forward. How do we do it? Can some of these worst case scenarios be avoided? You know? If they can, how can they be avoided? That's the big issue. That is the trick. That is the key. Because as we exemplified or identified throughout all of these videos, what we do now will make the difference for the future. Like we were saying before, in a paradoxical kind of like sense. Yeah? Our past has brought us here. Yeah? The cause and effect of our past is the current effect and cause for what's yet to come. Yeah? If we maintain that path, maintain that general approach towards things, as we have done through our timeline up until this point, will we just keep getting what we're always getting, or do we have a look at this through a fresh lens and get something completely different? Yeah. See how all of this, as I was saying in the last video, and the video before that, you see how I was saying before, how it is actually more and more relevant, how more relevant it's actually becoming now as it all begins to sync itself together. Yeah? You can now beginning to see what's going on. Yeah? Forward planning, as I've been hearing. Which again is something that was said. We'll move on from the leadership side of things to a more of a micro level. And Cornwall. Forward planning, identifying market segments, what parts of, in this case, the United Kingdom, is known for, like for instance manufacturing, fishing, and various other production elements, services, yeah, and so on and so forth. So the southwest has always been kind of like stuck in the form of a limbo, economic limbo. There's distances, there's no real, other than it being part of the hospitality, leisure and hospitality industry, which has fluctuated over the years. Now they've got a solid core market segment they have in which to bring the United Kingdom together to work with. It's a certain element of the marketplace that they can work on. We can work on. Yeah. So again, that's the space industry. Again, it will in itself help enhance other parts of the UK. Again, manufacturing, production, services, and so on and so forth. Yeah. Employment and all that type of stuff. So it's good. So thumbs up to it all. Whilst we're looking at things like that, finally they've reached an agreement in the NHS, a pay deal. So speculated 6% or thereabouts around over a 3-year period, giving it somewhere in the regions of a 2 point, without actually sitting down and working it out, 2.16% a year, which is obviously 1.1% more than what they have been getting. So it's a step in the right direction. That, and amongst other things, will be benefited and be able to recoup through Brexit bills or membership bills. Which brings me on to one key element within it. I'm not going to quiz or question or debate or otherwise comment on other talks within Brexit, other than there's one little element about all of this, and it's the transition period. When we talk about the transition period, again, the part of the transition period is within the leadership in itself. Now, fair enough, not being a member does lose some of its benefits. It does indeed marginalise you in that regard. However, looking at this objectively, place myself squarely in the middle of the two halves. At the end of the day, if the United Kingdom is going to be subject to the usual European Union rulings, and whilst it's understandable, even acceptable to an extent, that they don't have a say within its entirety of the operation, development, or the general progress of the European Union, it would indeed be plausible for anybody to argue or otherwise simply postulate or theorise that if there's something that is going to be impacting enough, and specifically negatively impacting a transitioning member, they do have a right to say something. And it should not fall upon deaf ears either. Because at the end of the day, that would say that you remove all your individual rights. We can quantify and speculate and make comparisons right across the board to validate any such statements. My two pennies worth would be careful with that one. Yeah? Because at the end of the day, infractions or problems can emerge from that. Yeah. So whilst I agree and understand and agree with what's being said and the terms and conditions to them of transitioning in that regard, in that one little segment, be careful with it. Yeah, because it has its own set of problems, and anything that needs to be said should be said, and it should not fall upon deaf ears. Yeah. Okay. Right. Beyond that, there's loads of other stuff that could be said. The best thing for me to say to keep this short is, remember, keep talking with each other, if you're not guilty of something, prove it. Remember that. Prove it. If, like for instance, we're saying with the part with Russia, if you're not accountable for that action, then say so. But say why you're not accountable for it. If so, then obviously within the game of shadows as well, then accept the sanctions, and then it will soon roll on. But remember, being too hard-lined, and this again serves its purpose for America as well as anybody else, being too hard-lined is what causes the problems. Yeah, it's where a lot of your problems come from. You become, even, I'll give another example. It's like, for instance, China, I know too full well, or the eastern elements, the blocks of the whole world, I know that they, on the surface of things, lack emotions. They're very hard-faced, a very stern-nosed business approach, right? But it is very subjective as well. Right behind that poker face, using somebody's strong words, lyrics, there is a very subjective element. Yeah. Try to work things out appropriately with each other. If there's debt that needs to be paid, it needs to be paid. It's simple. It's part of trades and treaties and fair economics. Yeah. I understand that with a vast population, that you need to be able to keep things cycling and increase the commerce to be able to feed so many mouths, along with the sanctions, or rather, should we say, the limitations and the controls on childbirth. It's understandable, but it's also been across the papers. It's not been news per se. It's been an article that limiting population growth down to one child per couple will eventually have a receding effect as well. So there's then parts in there that forms a part of it all. But just remember, be fair with each other. If you owe something, pay it. They don't have to be so hard then. Yeah? And so on and so forth. We've all experienced it. We've all been put in positions. Some of us are worse than others. Some of us are in positions being conned at the end of the day. So there has that knock-on effect. But on a macro scale, on this scale, it is just simply unpaid bills. And there it is. So it's working that out. Fair enough, a lot of people want to save face. Again, it's understandable. It's even acceptable. But at the same, what is not acceptable is blatantly avoiding responsibility. Yeah. Talk with each other. It works on society levels. I've been there myself. Yeah. So plenty of experience, loads of it. Some of it needless because of other people's greed. But again, it's all part of life's rich tapestry. And there it is. And you learn these things. But it should not be limited to the micro level. It works on a macro level as well. So, world leaders, sort your shit out, man. Seriously though, at the end of the day, all your problems have solutions. There are always an answer to a question. Yeah, like the analogy I used before with the nettle stings. Yeah? If it's not near it, there will be a dock leaf somewhere around it. Yeah? Sometimes the solution's actually within the problem itself. Yeah? But again, it's the biggest issue is the friction. There it is. Purely because people are not talking with each other, not understanding each other. People are not getting their own way. They're struggling to get their own way. Right? Rather than actually trying to work out what each person can benefit from it. Nobody really likes to think that they have to compromise. Sometimes the compromise is not in the sense that they lose something either. This is another side to it all that people seem to miss. Compromise doesn't always mean that you have to lose something. It may be the case where you have to just simply defer something, i.e. hold on to something whilst that person gets theirs. This is where your contracts come in now. This is why we have contracts and agreements and treaties and so on and so forth. They benefit from that time, and they benefit from it. And it works hand in hand then. And it does. Everybody then benefits. It's not just some of the people all of the time and all of the people some of the time. Yeah? So, it's nice to see North and South Korea kind of trying to work this lot out.
Yeah.
Hopefully they can. Hopefully the North can learn from the South and start working stuff out rather than trying to become a superpower that it's not. And given landmass, economic capabilities, population and so on and so forth, it will never be that much of a superpower. It's strong within its own right, of course, absolutely. But dynamically speaking, is looking at all the variables, speaks for itself, doesn't it? Keep working at it. Keep talking. Yeah. There you go. There's loads of information embedded in this 32-minute video. Yeah. Figure it out. You can do it. I know you can do it. I've been watching you for many years, and you do have the capability to actually take the road that is less travelled. Find the right solutions. Forward plan. Look at how this path works out. Cause and effect. You might not benefit in the immediate instance, but you may stand to benefit in the long run, where somebody may need a short-term resolve. Yeah. So again, it's balance. It's balancing it out. Somebody needs a short-term resolve. You will benefit greatly by a long-term resolve, and vice versa. Yeah, it can happen. You can make it work. Yeah. Right. On that note, I'll leave you to it. I've taken enough of your time now. There's plenty of information in there to unravel. I've already decided who it will be I would like to have a chat with, and then we'll go on from there. Very well. Again, I'll wait for the poke in the side again. Remember, we did, for those who are just starting to join in and watching this lot from the sidelines, originally these videos were more frequent than they were. All the data is backed up if anybody ever wanted to see them. I don't envisage that happening, but they used to be more frequent, and now you're catching it now that they're becoming more stretched out, because this type of involvement, if you believe it or not, it's your choice, this type of involvement is progressively not being required. Okay? Those who are on the receiving end of this, and they know who I'm talking to and talking about, they know that they're venturing into positions where they're in a better position. You will see odd things happening. My only input is like I say to them, and I say to anybody else, even within their own personal lives, just be mindful. Yeah, just be careful. Cause and effect. It is difficult to work with to begin with, is difficult to work out. But when you start looking at things and taking a bit more time to actually observe what's going on, like for instance with some of this fake news and time travelers, right? Keen observation, yeah, good imagination. We can all do it. It's all within our human capabilities. Right, you enjoy the rest of your day. As you can see, this was a nighttime production, fitting in doing other jobs for Trevor Crown and observing policies and the things that I've been observing and what could be done and paths forward and so on and so forth. So there's a lot going into it, along with write-ups for prototypes that have shown that they do work. It's bearing fruit. So there's loads of little things going on. Right? So I'm going to crack back on with that. You're going to enjoy the rest of your day, and you're going to figure out some of them problems, and I will be back again soon.